නව ටොමෙක්ස් පැල්ලම් සහ විස බීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. ටොමෙක්ස්.
Tonight, the laundry list. The Janata Vimukti Peramuna holds a no-holds-barred expose of government corruption over the past 20 years. On the way, the Energy Minister promises steady supplies in the coming weeks with Indian fuel and cheaper Thai gas. Fuel to the fire. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna says it will not nominate anyone other than Mahinda Rajapaksa in an interim government. All the way down. Business sentiment takes a swan dive in April due to an increasingly uncertain economic and political situation. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 3rd of May, 2022.
Clear Ice Cool Menthol is horrible in Tora Lassana Kes Kalamak Labade. Clear Samagin than zero dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Bringing you the latest from across the island, this is First at 9 and I'm David Ebert. Now, the Janata Vimukti Peramuna today held a media briefing where it showcased this collection of evidence of major corruption and fraud committed by government members in the past 20 years. Displaying the trove of files today, party leader Anura Kumara Dissanayake allowed members of the audience to select the files of their choice to be read out, which included files on current government and opposition members as well.
රජයේ විසින් ඇමරිකන් එක්සත් ජනපදයේ තානාපති කාර්යාලය මිලදී ගැනීම සඳහා වෙන් කරන මිලියන 6.2ක් ඒකෙන් ගහලා තියෙනවා මිලියන 3.3. ඒ කියන්නේ 55%ක් ගහලා තියෙනවා. ඇමරිකන් එක්සත් ජනපදයේ අධිකරණයේදී ඔහු පිළිගෙන තිබෙනවා එවැනි කොමිස් මුදලක් ගත්තු බව. ජාලි වික්‍රමසිංහ යනු මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂගේ ඥාති සොහොයුරකි. ඊළඟ ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා පහුගියදා පැන්ඩෝරා පේපර් හරහා එළියට ආවා. ඩොලර් මිලියන 160කට ආසන්න මුදලක් තිරුනඩේෂන් සහ නිරූපමා පවුලට හිමිකාරීත්වයේ තිබෙන බව. අපි දිගින් දිගට පෙන්වා දෙනු ලැබුවා තිරුනඩේෂන්ගේ නමින් තමයි බැසිල්ගේ ගොඩක් දේපල තිබෙන්නේ කියලා. 2014 ගින් නිල්වලා කියන ගනුදෙනු. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපේ රටේ මැතිවරණ ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරාට පස්සේ සියලු අමාත්‍යංශවල මිලදී ගැනීම වියදම් සියල්ල නතර කරනවා. හැබැයි එසේ තිබියදී වාරිමාර්ග අමාත්‍යංශෙන් කඩිමුඩියේ චීන සමාගමට සල්ලි දෙනවා. එම චීන සමාගම විටින් විට ඩොලර් මිලියන 5ක් රූත් ඉන්ටර්නැෂනල් කියන කම්පැනි එකේ account එකට වමාරු කොට තිබෙනවා. ඒ කම්පැනි එක තිරුනඩේෂන්ගේ. ඒ වෙලාවේ වාරිමාර්ග ඇමති නිමල් සිරිපාල් සිල්වා ඒ කම්පැනි එකෙන් කොල්ලුපිටියේ පිහිටි ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ බැංකුවක් වෙත සල්ලි යවනවා. ඒ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ තියෙන බැංකුවේ ගිණුමින් සල්ලි වියදම් කරලා තිබෙනවා මල්වානේ ඉඩම ගන්න. ඊළඟ ප්‍රංශ එයාබස් සමාගම එක් රටවල් වලට එයාබස් මිලදී ගැනීම සඳහා බලපෑම් කරමින් වැඩිපුර මිලදී අරගෙන තියෙනවා කියලා පරීක්ෂණයක් ගියා ජාත්‍යන්තර පරීක්ෂණයක්. ඒ ජාත්‍යන්තර පරීක්ෂණයේ ලන්ඩන් මහාධිකරණ නඩුවක් ගොනු වුණා. අපිත් මේ එයාබස් අරගෙන ගිවිසුමක් අත්සන් කරනවා. මේ එයාබස් මිලදී ගන්න ගිවිසුම අත්සන් කරන්නේ එයා ලංකා සමාගමේ අධ්‍යක්ෂක මණ්ඩල රැස්වීම තියන්නේ චමල්ගේ නිල නිවසේ බත්තරමුල්ලි. මොකද ඔහුගේ පුතා එම අධ්‍යක්ෂ මණ්ඩලයේ සමාජිකයෙක්. මේකේ සමස්ත මිලදී ගැනීම ඩොලර් බිලියන 2.2. ලංකා ඉතිහාසයේම සිදු වී තිබෙන විශාලතම මිලදී ගැනීම. මේ මිලදී ගැනීමේදී එකඟතාවයකට එනවා. ඒ 330 යානාවක් සැපීමට පසුව ඩොලර් මිලියනය බැගින්ද. ඒ 350 යානාවක් සැපීමට පසු ඩොලර් මිලියන 1.16 බැගින්ද. කල්බතු ක්‍රමයට ගන්නා යානා 4ට ඩොලර් ලක්ෂ 3 බැගින්ද කප්පම් ගෙවන්න එකඟතාවයකට. ඔක්කොම ගත්තාම ඩොලර් මිලියන 16.18. මේ ඩොලර් මිලියන 16ම ලැබුණේ නැහැ. මොකද ආණ්ඩුව පෙරළුණා. ඩොලර් මිලියන 2ක අත්තිකාර මුදල් ලබා දී තිබෙනවා. ඒ වෙනකොට යාලංකායේ ප්‍රධාන විධායක නිලධාරී කපිල චන්ද්‍රසේනගේ බිරිඳගේ account එකට ඩොලර් මිලියන 2 ගිහින් තිබෙනවා බ්‍රූනයි වල. ඒ බ්‍රූනයි වල ඩොලර් මිලියන 2 ඕස්ට්‍රේලියාවේ account එකකට මාරු කරනවා. ඕස්ට්‍රේලියාවේ account එකෙන් යම් මුදල් ප්‍රමාණයක් ලංකාවේ ගිණුම් 3කට එනවා. ඒකෙන් එක ගිණුමක් තමයි නිමල් පෙරේරාගේ ගිණුම. කොටුවේ අර ටෙලිකොම් එක ඉදිරිපිට තියෙන අක්කර 4මාරක් අතර භූමියක් ක්‍රිස් කියන සමාගමකට පවරා දුන්නා හොටෙල් සංකීර්ණයක් ඉදි කරන්න. ඔන්න ක්‍රිස් ගනුදෙනුව පිළිබඳව ඒ විමර්ශනයේදී සිංගප්පූරු වල පිහිටි account එකකට සල්ලි මාරු වී තිබෙන බවත් අර ඖෂධ සමාගමෙන් එතෙන්ට සල්ලි එවා තිබෙන බවත් ඒ සල්ලිත් නිමල් පෙරේරාගේ account එකට ඇති වී තිබෙන බවත් නැක්කම මල්ලේ දරුවෝ ඉතින් මේක අහුවෙච්ච නැති ෆයිල් දෙක තුනක් තියෙනවා මම අල්ලයි කියලා බලන් හිටියේ වර්තමාන විපක්ෂ නායකතුමෝ කිව්වනේ ඒගොල්ලෝ හොරුන්ට දඬුවම් දෙනවා කියලා. ඉතින් එයාගේ ෆයිල් වගේකුත් තියෙනවා. එයාගේ කිරියල්ලගේ රාජිත ඒවා තියෙනවා මේ. සංස්කෘතික අරමුදලේ විමර්ශන වාර්තාවක්. සංස්කෘතික අරමුදලේ නිල බලයෙන් සභාපති වෙන අගමැතිවරයා. ඒ කියන්නේ අගමැතිවරයා කියන්නේ කවුද? රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ. ඒතකොට ජනාධිපති ඡන්දය ආසන්නයි මට මතක නොවැම්බර් 10 වගේ. හදිසි අධ්‍යක්ෂ මණ්ඩල රැස්වීමක් අරගෙන පරණ වියදම් අනුමත කරගන්නවා. ඒ වියදම් අනුමත කරන රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ අත්සන් කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද සභාපතිවරයා අත්සන් කරන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒක වළංගු නැහැ. ඒ නිසා කිසිදු විධිමත් මුදල් නිදහස් කර ගැනීමෙන් තොරව රුපියල් බිලියන 3ක් සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස සංස්කෘතික අරමුදල විනාශ කරලා තිබුණා ෆයිල් එක තියෙනවා මෙතන. ඉතින් මේ කවුරුත් දන්න ප්‍රසිද්ධ වංචාව ඇවන්ගාඩ් ගනුදෙනු. මේකෙදී ප්‍රධාන එක තමයි මේ ආදායමෙන් 25% ආණ්ඩුවට දෙන්න එකඟ වෙනවා. බිස්නස් එක පටන් ගත්තේ නාවික හමුදාවෙන්. බිස්නස් එක ඇවන්ගාඩ් එකට පවරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ආදායමෙන් 25% දෙන්න එකඟ වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ එක නාවික හමුදාපතිවරයෙක් ඒ 25 23ට වගේ අඩු කරනවා. අඩු කරලා ඊළඟ යා විශ්‍රාම ගියාට පස්සේ ඇවන්ගාඩ් එකේ ජොබ් එකට යනවා. ඊළඟ නාවික හමුදාපතිවරයා නැවත මේක අඩු කරනවා. අඩු කරලා ඔහුත් විශ්‍රාම ගියාට පස්සේ ඇවන්ගාඩ් එකේ උපදේශකෙක් වෙනවා. ඊළඟ කෙනා මේක 17ට අඩු කරනවා මට ගණන් ටික බලන්න. ඊට පස්සේ ඔහු ඇවන්ගාඩ් එකේ ජොබ් එකට යනවා. ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂත් හිටපු නාවික හමුදාපතිවරු තිදෙනා මේ අනුව මහේස්ත්‍රාත් අධිකරණයට කැඳවුවා. මහේස්ත්‍රාත් අධිකරණයට කැඳවීම නිසා තමයි මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේනට ඩෝන් ගියා. මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන එදා තමයි දිල්රුක්ෂි ඩයස් අල්ලාස් කොමිසමේ අධ්‍යක්ෂ ජනරාල්වරියට ඉවත් වෙන්න කියන වගේ තර්ජනයක් කරේ. දිල්රුක්ෂි ඩයස් ගෙදර යන්න උනේ මේ ෆයිල් එක නිසා.
රිස්ක් ගනුදෙනුට අදාළ මේ නඩුවේ බී රිපෝට් එක තියෙනවා. ඒතර මේ නඩුවට අදාළව නාමල් රාජපක්ෂ පිළි අරන් තියෙනවා මිලියන 60ක් එයාට නිමල් පෙරේරා දුන්නා කියලා. ඒ මිලියන 60 එයා රග්බි තරගාවලියට ලබා දුන්නා කියලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි රග්බි සම්මේලනයේ නිලධාරීන් සියලු දෙනා කියලා තියෙනවා අපිට එහෙම සල්ලි හම්බුන්නේ නැහැ කියලා මේ වාර්තාවේ තියෙනවා. අර මිස් කෙනෙක් ඇහුවා මේ බැඳුම් කරේ සල්ලි ගත්ත අයගේ විස්තර තියෙනවද? අපි ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ හතර පාරක් ලියලා කිව්වා මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන දාපු ජනාධිපති කොමිසමේ වාර්තාව එළියට දාන්න කියලා. පිටු 106ක් හංගන් ඉන්නවා. ඒ 106 තියෙනවා මිලියන 3250 බෙදාගත්ත අයගේ විස්තර. ඒ 3250 බෙදාගත්ත අයගේ කීප දෙනෙක් අහු වුණා. ඊට අමතරව නිල නොවන ලෙස වගකීමෙන් කියනවා ඒ වෙනකොට පොදු ජන පෙරමුණේ හිටපු මන්ත්‍රීවරු 25 දෙනෙක් එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ මන්ත්‍රීවරු 52ක් එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂය ඇතුළු අසල්ලි අරන් තියෙනවා. ඒ නම ඇතුළේ වර්තමාන විපක්ෂ නායක නමක් තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මේ අය මේ වාර්තා එළියට දාන්න නැත්te නිකන් නෙමෙයි මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන ගෙදරින් ඔක්කොම සල්ලි අරන් තියෙනවා ලෝසිස්ගේ.
Meanwhile, former President Maithripala Sirisena has condemned the claims that part of the money stolen through the central bank bond scam was received by him and his family members. In a statement issued on behalf of the former president, his private secretary called the allegations baseless and promised all possible legal action will be taken against those malicious statements in the future. Now, the cabinet has decided to provide a special cash allowance to low-income families that are affected by the economic crisis. The government has allocated over 13 billion rupees for this program from funds provided by the World Bank. Speaking at the cabinet briefing today, cabinet spokesperson Dr. Nalaka Godaheva says that Sri Lanka is looking at other alternatives to obtain bridge financing without totally depending on the IMF's rapid financing facilities. And with that, let's have a look at some of the other cabinet decisions that were announced today. At the cabinet meeting last evening, a proposal to provide a special cash allowance to low-income families who are entitled to specific government allowances was given the green light. The World Bank is set to provide the necessary funding for this scheme.
ඒ වගේම මේ කාණ්ඩ හතර තුල දැනට දීමනා නොලැබුණත් දීමනා ලැබීමට සුදුසුයි කියපු හඳුනාගත්ත තවත් පවුල් ඒකක ගණනාවක් තියෙනවා. ඒ අනුව අපි ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් පවුල් ඒකක මිලියන 3.4ක ප්‍රමාණයකට අමතර දීමනාවක් ලබා දෙන්න මැයි මාසයේ ඉඳලා පටන් ගන්නවා. ඒ සඳහා ඇස්තමේන්තුගත වියදම එක මාසයකට රුපියල් මිලියන 4,455යි. ඒ අනුව මාස 3ක කාලයක් සඳහා රුපියල් මිලියන 13,364ක මුදලක් වැය කිරීමට රජය බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Further, the appointment of a subcommittee to study the contents of the preliminary report prepared by the Committee of Legal Experts who are drafting a new constitution and who are also making appropriate recommendations to the cabinet was also approved. The subcommittee, chaired by Professor G.L. Piris, includes Ministers Ali Sabri, Dinesh Gunawardena, Douglas Devananda and Dr. Ramesh Pattarana. In addition, cabinet approval was granted for the implementation of a pilot project for introducing a digital gateway for passengers at Platform 1 at the BIA, based on the International Aviation Association's concept of one identity. Based on the project, passenger check-ins will be an easy process after providing confirmation of a valid digital passport for the identification of the passenger to the electronic door or through facial recognition devices at the access points of the departure lounge that will be installed soon. The Cabinet also approved the presentation of the regulations for the Import and Export Control Act No. 8 of 2022 to control the import of selected non-essential goods with effect from the 10th of March for parliamentary approval. Further, a decision was taken to set up a subcommittee to identify investment opportunities that have the potential to attract foreign investments expeditiously as a solution to the current foreign exchange crisis in the country. The committee comprises of Ministers Nalaka Godeheva, Dilum Amanugama, Kanchana Wijesekara, Pramita Bandar Tenakun and State Minister Lohan Ratwatta.
There are so many investment proposals which are stuck at different places. For example, if you take UDA, there are several investment proposals which have come to UDA with regard to land that are stuck there. There are proposals that has come to BOI which are stuck there due to various reasons. When it comes to Port City, there are proposals which are stuck. There are Railway Department, there are some proposals. So what we thought was bring all these ministers together who are involved in this into a single committee so that we can look at whatever is the pending investment proposal which have already come and see how we can expedite those things.
Meanwhile, a committee was appointed last week to study the large number of renewable energy investment proposals. At the cabinet briefing, the cabinet spokesperson explained what the committee is expected to do.
There are so many investment proposals that are coming specifically to the power ministry which require sovereign guarantees. So then you have to go to finance department, finance ministry and discuss whether it is feasible. If they forward all these proposals to the finance ministry committees, currently appointed committees are going to get overloaded. So this specific committee comprising of 4 secretaries was appointed to filter them down and identify what should be forwarded to the finance ministry. It is just to simplify the process.
Speaking further, Dr. Godeheva also commented on the latest negotiations with the IMF and the possible advantages.
The team who went to USA was able to meet the senior most officials of IMF and overwhelming response. When it comes to the IMF support has a standard way of coming. Usually for any country, for an IMF program to start, there's a minimum time period of 6 months. So even though our immediate requirement is 3 billion, nobody was expecting IMF to give 3 billion so that our finance minister can come back and declare that he has got 3 billion. What he achieved was he got consent from IMF to come into a staff level agreement within about 3 months' time. That's a major significant achievement. And IMF has openly declared to the world that they are going to help Sri Lanka. Now, when we talk to China will take into account the fact that IMF is supporting us. All other debtors with whom we are talking about debt restructuring will take into account that IMF is with us. However, the immediate finance requirement of about 3 to 4 billion in Sri Lanka, roughly about, let's say 3 billion, we can't depend totally on IMF. We are trying to get into this rapid financing program of IMF. Even the Indian finance minister, who is a member of the IMF board, has made a special recommendation the IMF should support. We are not even waiting for that. We are looking at other alternatives to find some bridging finance.
Now, the Chinese government has decided to give Sri Lanka a further 300 million yuan to purchase food, medicines, fuel and other essentials following a phone call between the premiers of the two countries a few days ago. This latest grant will bring the total amount of China's grant aid to Sri Lanka to 500 million yuan, or approximately $76 million. The government of China has decided to provide another grant of 300 million yuan to Sri Lanka to help in the supply of medicines, food, fuel and other essentials. The grant comes following a telephone conversation held between Sri Lanka's Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang late last month. During the phone conversation, Premier Li told PM Rajapaksa that China feels for Sri Lanka for the difficulties and challenges it faces and added that China wants to do its utmost to provide help to improve the people's livelihoods in the country. PM Rajapaksa has reiterated Sri Lanka's gratitude to Premier Li and the Chinese government for their continued support to Sri Lanka. This latest grant will bring the total amount of China's grant aid to 500 million yuan, which is approximately $76 million. Now, the cabinet has granted the contract for supplying fuel to Sri Lanka under the extended $200 million Indian credit facility to the Indian Oil Corporation Limited. With that, 4 fuel shipments are expected to arrive in Sri Lanka this month. Further, the cabinet has also approved the purchase of liquefied petroleum gas from a Thai company at a price $9 less per metric ton compared to the current Omani supplier. Yesterday, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara announced that India has extended its existing credit facility of $500 million by another $200 million as the $500 million facility is expected to end this month. From the latter part of April, Sri Lanka had called for bids for fuel procurements under this extended facility. At the cabinet meeting last evening, the cabinet greenlighted the proposal presented by the subject minister to award the contract to the Indian Oil Corporation Limited upon the recommendation of a cabinet-appointed special standing procurement committee. Under the extended facility, 4 shipments of petrol, diesel and jet fuel are expected to arrive in Sri Lanka this month. Meanwhile, from last evening onwards, private bus operators reported back to duty after calling off their strike. However, fuel supplies to refueling stations still remained low, as the supply is yet to be restored completely. As a result, queues for fuel remained high near filling stations. Further, some stations remained closed during the day due to the lack of fuel. On the country's gas situation, the cabinet gave the approval to purchase liquefied petroleum gas from a Thailand-based entity, Siam Gas and Petrochemicals Public Company Limited, for a period of 1 year. According to Litrogas Lanka Limited, the prices offered by Siam Gas are less than $9 per metric ton when compared with the rates offered by the Omani supplier that supplies LPG to Sri Lanka at present. The company also said that Siam Gas will supply 70% of Sri Lanka's LP gas requirement per year. However, the public still demands a solution to the existing shortages. In the meantime, the Ceylon Electricity Board has informed the Minister of Power and Energy of a technical breakdown in one of the power plants at the Norochere power plant. As a result, the national grid has lost a total of 270 megawatts. Minister Vijay Sekara stated that repairs are currently underway and assured that the power plant will be reconnected to the national grid within 5 days. He also said that no further extensions will be made to the rolling power interruptions owing to the situation. With that being the case, 3-hour and 20-minute power cuts approved by the Public Utilities Commission will remain the same as planned. And we'll be back with more local stories right after this short break. Do stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Now, the Samagi Jana Balawegya today handed over 2 no-confidence motions against the Prime Minister, the government and the President to Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardena. In the meantime, parliamentarian Basil Rajapaksa has reportedly stated at a meeting on the interim government issue that the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa may take a decision to resign considering the request of the Mahanayaka Theras. However, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna will not nominate anyone else for the position in any new government. The members of the committee appointed to seek suggestions and views on the interim government met with a group of members of the Samagi Jana Balawegya this morning and held discussions. Nimal Siripala de Silva, Vimal Viravansa, Udayagaman Pilla and Tiran Alas also participated in the discussion. General Secretary of the party Ranjit Madhuma Bandara, Rajita Senaratna, Dr. Harsha de Silva, Gayantha Karunatilaka and Eran Vikramaratna were also present at the discussions on behalf of the Samagi Jana Balawegya. Accordingly, in order to take a decision on the proposals put forward during the discussion, opposition leader Sachit Premadasa summoned his MPs for discussions. Accordingly, a group of members of the Samagi Jana Balawegya handed over 2 no-confidence motions to the Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardena this afternoon. Meanwhile, representatives of the Independent Parliamentary Group appointed to seek suggestions and ideas for the formation of a national consensus government held a discussion with the President and the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna yesterday. It was reported that parliamentarian Basil Rajapaksa has stated at this meeting that the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa may take a decision to resign considering the request of the Mahanayaka Theras. Rajapaksa has stated that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna will not nominate anyone other than Mahinda Rajapaksa if a party leadership committee asks for nominations for the post of the new Prime Minister in the new government. At the last election, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna conducted its election campaign in accordance with an agreement reached to give the post of Prime Minister to Mahinda Rajapaksa. Meanwhile, the President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Sadia Pires, met with the Most Venerable Tibbatubave Sri Sumangala Thera, the Chief Prelate of the Malatu chapter, after the Prelate's statement yesterday that he would not entertain discussions with any politicians. The 13-point proposal submitted by the Bar Association as a solution to the economic and political crisis in the country was presented to the Venerable Chief Prelate. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's total external debt has increased to $50.7 billion at end 2021 from $49 billion by end 2020. This is mainly due to the increase in the external debt of the central bank and deposit-taking corporations. Sri Lanka's total external debt position has increased in 2021 mainly due to the increase in the external debt of the central bank and deposit-taking corporations. The total external debt of the country increased to $50.7 billion at end 2021 from $49 billion by end 2020. Although the total outstanding foreign loans of the government recorded an increase during the year, mainly with the receipt of 2 foreign currency term financing facilities obtained from the CDB, the external debt stock of the government valued at the market price declined from $28.2 billion at end 2020 to $27.3 billion at end 2021. This was a result of the combined effect of the decline in market prices of Sri Lanka's outstanding ISBs and the repayment of an ISB that matured in July 2021. A key reason for the reduction of the outstanding government external debt in 2021 was due to a lack of new borrowings from international markets, while repayment of some external debt obligations of the government had to be met by utilizing central bank reserves. Meanwhile, the outstanding external debt of the central bank increased significantly by end 2021 in comparison to that of end 2020 due to the new bilateral currency swap arrangements with the Bangladesh Bank and the People's Bank of China, although the international swap facility with the Reserve Bank of India obtained in 2020 was repaid during the year. In the meantime, the total outstanding external debt of the country as a percentage of GDP recorded a marginal decline during the year. The total outstanding external debt as a percentage of GDP stood at 60% at end 2021, compared to 60.5% reported at end 2020, reflecting the increase in nominal GDP during 2021 compared to 2020. The outstanding external debt position of the government out of the total external debt position declined to 53.9% by end 2021 from 57.5% recorded at end 2020. In terms of the debt maturity profile, debt with long-term maturity declined marginally to 50% of GDP by end 2021 compared to 50.4% of GDP by end 2020. The Consumer Affairs Authority today issued a Gazette Extraordinary on the maximum retail prices of a variety of local rice, acting on the powers vested in it by Section 25 of the Consumer Affairs Authority Act No. 9 of 2003. The Consumer Affairs Authority issued maximum retail prices for the sale of local varieties of rice. As such, a maximum retail price of 222 rupees per kilo was issued for both red and white local Nadu rice, while a maximum retail price of 230 rupees per kilo was marked for both red and white local Samba rice. And the maximum retail price for local Kili Samba has been marked at 260 rupees per kilo. Accordingly, no supplier, manufacturer, producer, distributor or trader shall sell, supply or offer for sale the local varieties of rice listed exceeding the maximum retail prices issued by the authority. Meanwhile, protests calling on the President, Prime Minister and the government to resign immediately continue across the island. The Golf-Face Green protest was held for its 25th consecutive day, while demonstrations near temple trees continued for the 9th day.
Today marks the 25th day of the anti-government protest at the Golf-Face Green, just 6 days shy of a month. The calls for the President and the government to step down has remained strong throughout, as more people continue to stream into the Gota Gogama site to support their demands. With Eid ul-Fitr falling today, the Muslim community did not forget to engage in their religious observances at the site today. Further, the Muslim community also arranged an almsgiving for the Buddhist clergy, demonstrating signs of ethnic solidarity. In the meantime, the Inter-University Buddhist clergy conducted a protest march today from the Vihara Mahadevi Park in a bid to support the anti-government protest at Gota Gogama. Further, the protesters who removed a barrier located near the World Trade Center arrived close to the central bank. After concluding demonstrations near the central bank, the protesters arrived near the President's house in Fort and conducted a protest there. Finally, they marched towards the Golf-Face site to support the anti-government protest. Further, a public organization in Ratnapura commenced a protest march to Colombo this morning to support the anti-government calls held island-wide. The march is expected to conclude at the Gota Gogama site this Sunday. Meanwhile, near the temple trees, demonstrations worked off for the 9th consecutive day, calling on Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa to resign. Several factions arrived at the site to support the protest against the PM. Due to the mass demonstrations, police security was also seen beefed up near the temple trees. In the meantime, more protests urging the president and his government to resign worked off in different areas of the country.
Welcome back. Welcome back. As Ramadan festival draws to a close, Muslims all over the world celebrated Eid al-Fitr, or the festival of the breaking of the fast today. In his Eid message today, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa stated that people have a responsibility to use the social doctrines and messages taught by religions for the betterment of society. Eid ul-Fitr, one of the most celebrated festivals in Islam, marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan, a month when Muslims across the world fast from dawn to dusk. Ramadan is the 9th month in the Islamic calendar, which is based on a 12-month lunar year of approximately 354 days. The month traditionally begins and ends based on the sighting of the new moon. It is believed that the Holy Quran was first revealed to Prophet Muhammad during the month of Ramadan. The Muslim community welcomes Ramadan as an opportunity for self-reflection and spiritual improvement, and as a means to grow in moral excellence. The Colombo Grand Mosque meanwhile announced that Ramadan would dawn today based on the sighting of the new moon. Accordingly, the Muslim community in Sri Lanka celebrated Ramadan today, giving priority to their customs. Meanwhile, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa conveyed his Eid ul-Fitr greetings to all Sri Lanka's Muslim community today. In his message, the President stated that the Muslim community is expected to receive a mental stimulus to practice good deeds every day according to the religious principles of Allah. He also added that people have a responsibility to use the social doctrines and messages taught by religions for the betterment of society. Further, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, while extending his Eid ul-Fitr greetings, urged all the citizens to be sensitive and generous to other people in society at this time when the whole country is facing a challenging moment. Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa in his message stated that the fasting season of Ramadan is a great opportunity to understand the plight of hungry people, to lead a life of self-sacrifice with a sensitive mind, and to develop the ability to control their minds. He also added that the determination is to exemplify those good lifestyles in their daily lives without restricting it for just a month. Now, the LMD Nielsen IQ Business Sentiment Index has plummeted by a massive 16 points in April to end at 116, its lowest level this year. The report says that people are struggling to survive in a country that's facing more adverse economic constraints than ever before, and which has led to a slowdown in Sri Lanka's GDP growth rate. Multiple crises and the rise of people power are taking their toll on business sentiment, says the LMD Nielsen IQ Business Sentiment Report for the month of April. This has led to the Business Confidence Index plummeting 16 basis points in April to end at 116, which is its lowest level this year. Compared to a year ago, the barometer of business confidence is a whopping 22 notches lower, and it has fallen below the all-time average of 126. The report says, however, that if there is a silver lining amid the doom and gloom, it is that the BCI is higher than its 12-month average of 109. Nielsen IQ's Director Consumer Insights, Terikami Anandenia, says the people are struggling to survive in a country that's facing more adverse economic constraints than ever before. This has led to a slowdown in Sri Lanka's GDP growth rate at constant prices, and by the last quarter of 2021, it stood at 1.8%, with the services, agriculture and industry all being affected. She adds that imports have outpaced exports, and year-on-year inflation was at a 20-year high of 21.5% in March, with food inflation at 24.7% in February. In terms of sensitivities, the countless downside risks that hover over the economy and political landscape at the time of the report's release continue to cast a shadow over the BCI's prospects in the near and medium term, she says. In the meantime, Russia's invasion of Ukraine marks its 69th day today, with no sight of a conclusion towards the end of the 3-month-long war. Meanwhile, UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson, in his virtual address to the Ukrainian Parliament today, announced that the United Kingdom is willing to send a £300 million support package for Ukraine. Further, Russia's president has approved new retaliatory economic sanctions in response to the, quote, unfriendly actions of certain foreign states and international organizations, the Kremlin said.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, in his virtual address to the Ukraine Parliament today, announced that the UK will send more arms to Ukraine in the coming weeks as part of a €300 million support package. The support package will include radars to pinpoint artillery bombarding Ukraine cities, heavy lift drones to supply Ukraine forces, and thousands of night vision devices. He says that this will aid the UK's long-term goal to fortify Ukraine so that no one will ever dare to attack it again. Meanwhile, according to the Kremlin, President Putin has approved new retaliatory economic sanctions in response to the unfriendly actions of certain foreign states and international organizations. According to the decree, Moscow will forbid the export of products and raw materials to people and entities that it has sanctioned. The decree also prohibits transactions with foreign individuals and companies hit by Russia's retaliatory sanctions and permits Russian counterparties not to fulfill obligations towards them. According to a statement issued by Ukraine military, Russian forces are trying to take over the key towns of the eastern Ukraine's Lugansk region as they continue their offensive in the Donbas. The Ukraine military also said that the Russians are also trying to advance in the Izium district of the northeastern Kharkiv region, but bad roads and wet soil are preventing them from making progress.
And that's all we have for you tonight. We hope you join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.